Welcome to the 1000 Wives of Weird podcast, the podcast that is a celebration of all things weird, mostly movies. I'm Brad Hefner, and with me is
Billy Martell.
Billy Martell, local guy.
Yeah,
Local
guy.
I want to say man about town, but you're not. You're just a man.
I don't go out much.
You're a man.
I just kind of hang out. I'm barely a man, really.
That we can make another podcast where we examine that
my self-image.
Yeah.
Okay.
And just really
dive into it.
Yeah.
Peel back all the layers.
Let's like a vivisection. Are you familiar with that term? Do you know what that means?
I'm familiar with the term vivisection.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, like an emotional, spiritual vivisection.
Sounds gross.
I love weird things. That's very basic and a blanket statement, but I just love it. Mm-hmm. I can't really explain it any better than that. And I constantly hunt it out, and I love to talk about it.
Absolutely.
But there's not a lot of... I'm not like the other girls, Billy. There's not a lot of other people around. There's not a lot of other people around that I can talk to about this stuff.
Sure.
So that's part of what this podcast is if you're a young boy out there in Radioland, like watching Videodrome and just being like, oh man, I wish my school chums knew about body horror. Like
if you're a young boy or gal or undecided who just likes weird shit that you don't know how to express to the other people around you who are not into that kind of thing, this is the place for you.
Yes.
Yeah.
And the nice thing about weird being such a basic term is we can stretch it any way we want.
Yeah.
We're going to cover some stuff that's not amazingly weird, but is maybe it's the production has something weird about it, or there's something unique about it. We're going to be covering eventually some very tentpole films, very obvious stuff.
Yeah.
You've never seen Eraserhead?
I've never seen Eraserhead.
But you are a Lynch fan? I'm
a Twin Peaks fan at the very least, and I love Blue Velvet. So I guess that does make me... And I'm a fan of the weirdness that is the person of Lynch.
What about Wild at Heart?
I enjoyed parts of it. I think that overall I was kind of disappointed, though.
Okay.
Yeah.
That sounds like an episode we need to have.
I guess we can have that as an episode.
We can discuss David Lynch's unsung classic.
You described yourself to me almost within the first couple times that we met as a hunter of weird.
Yes.
Yeah, as you said that this podcast is about the hunt and stretching the goalpost.
Exactly. It's about chasing the dragon, because every time you see something that you're like, oh wow, that's weird, or oh my god, that's so fucked up, or what the hell is happening?
Yeah.
You change.
Yeah.
Like, now your tolerance has gone up. Mm-hmm. You have taken a step that you cannot go backwards. Every time I find myself like truly revolted by something,
right,
the next time I see it, I'm like, oh, that was it. Like,
right.
And now I just like, there are things that don't bother me that I cannot tell people they don't bother me, because they're like, that should bother you.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're going to go to some uncomfortable places.
Great.
We're going to go to some sexy places.
Great.
We're going to go to some revolting places.
Great. We're going to vivisect the weird thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Didn't you first bring up the subject of bringing back the podcast? And
I said that I wanted to do a podcast with you of some kind. I don't
Gotcha.
remember if I said that I wanted to do this one. But
it does sound like me to just go like, what's the laziest option? Show I had before. Let's do the same thing.
But I'm always looking for, because like I'm also a lazy person, and I am a huge nerd. I'm wearing a Power Ranger shirt as we speak. I'm very into superhero science fiction. So generally, when it comes to what am I going to watch today, I usually go for let's watch this episode of Batman that I've watched 20 million times. But I still have that desire where I want to expand my palette. I want to see more weird, interesting, foreign things to my own sensibility. And so this is a great way of forcing myself to go outside of my comfort zone on a semi-regular basis. So that's why I was, on top of just doing something with you, which I've wanted to do for a while, this is just a great way of formally forcing myself to go there, you know?
And that's the best way to experience anything, is through force.
Yeah, I think so.
To just, like, really just be like, God damn it, I gotta do it. Fuck.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that scene from Clockwork Orange where his eyes are, like, literally being forced open to watch the thing with the eye drops and everything like that. That's really a scene that we should all aspire to be more like, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the message of the movie was good. That's the message of Clockwork Orange, is that the Ludovico treatment is everyone should. It doesn't even matter if you're not a criminal. You have to go through it.
Yeah, no, every single person should.
Babies should have to go through it.
Yes, absolutely.
For our very first movie.
Very first.
We are talking about the 1988 action comedy, Traxx.
Traxx.
Starring Shadoe Stevens.
Yes.
Shadoe Stevens.
Yes, who I always knew as the SNL announcer and the announcer on the Late Late Show with Craig Ferguson. I never knew that he actually did any acting.
Well, half of what you knew about him is wrong.
Oh.
He did not do the announcing for SNL. Shadoe Stevens was the host of American Top 40 from 1988 to 1995.
Ah, okay.
He was co-founder and creator of Sammy Hagar's rock station Cabo Wabo Radio.
Oh, wow.
Announcer for The Late Late Show.
That explains the hair if he was hanging out with Sammy Hagar.
His voice can be heard as the voiceover for G.O.D. in the off-Broadway musical Altar Boys, boy spelled with a Z.
Oh, boy.
He was the announcer for Hollywood Squares from 1986 to 1989.
Perfect.
And the first 4 seasons of the 1998 to 2004 version. And he was in the middle square of the bottom row.
Aw. That's cool.
But Traxx was really his big acting thing. Yes.
Yeah. So he didn't do a lot besides this in terms of acting.
No.
Okay. Other than G.O.D.
Other than G.O.D. That was voice acting.
Right.
Guess how many theaters Traxx opened up in?
I'm guessing an upsettingly small number.
0. It
Really?
was direct to video.
Oh!
It was...
That makes so much more sense, actually.
It was going to be released in theaters.
Okay.
So it was not planned as just like a ditch thing.
Yeah, but it feels like a ditch thing.
I don't know.
It does to me. Okay. So here's the feel of Traxx. If you ever had a movie night where you just watched a ton of canon action movies, like Chuck Norris, Charles Bronson action movies made by Canon, where they just shat a dozen of these out a minute, and they all have just giant explosions and really fascist ideologies that they don't think about at all, and you're like laughing at them as like, this is the dumbest shit ever. Imagine if someone were to take that and then be like, let's make this an intentional comedy instead of an accidental comedy, but didn't really take it too much farther than the actual products.
Yeah, that's
what this movie is. It's so weird.
It's fucking bizarre.
Yeah. But most of the canon films feel like direct-to-video to me, even the ones that did go to theaters.
And I thought this was a canon film.
It feels so much like one.
But it's by the De Laurentiis group.
It is.
And I don't think Dino was like on set like
definitely
like
not.
Steven Spielberg and Toby Hooper on the Poltergeist. I don't think Dino was like guiding hands, but
no, not at all.
I could also see Dino De Laurentiis being like, "This is great."
Yeah,
because like this feels like other stuff he's done.
Yeah, no, he's not famous for always having the most high quality films in his stable. So
yes.
Yeah,
very briefly. Traxx is about a renegade cop who becomes a mercenary,
Yes.
who decides who wants to settle down and bake cookies. That's the first 5 minutes. And then he goes on to tame the town of Hadleyville.
Well, to be more specific, he realizes he can't cook, which he probably should have thought about first, and so he runs out of money, and then realizes that the town of Hadleyville needs a town tamer.
Yes.
So he asks for money, and then without getting a contract first, immediately starts taming the town.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like you said, it feels like it's supposed to be a parody of
Death
80s
Wish,
action movies,
yeah.
Death Wish,
Delta
stuff like
Force,
that.
yeah.
And with weird movies, it's best if you experience them firsthand.
Definitely,
obviously.
yeah.
So what we're going to do is we're going to tell you whether we think Traxx is worth watching, so you can decide to stop this and go watch it before you listen to us talk about it, or if you'd just like to hear us talk about it, because we're going to ruin everything.
Yeah.
Traxx is not on DVD,
Oh, is it not?
but it can be found.
Yes.
I will not say, if you want to find Traxx, TRAXX,
Yeah.
you
It's
can
not
find
that
it.
hard. It's not that hard to find.
Billy, why don't you start off? Would you recommend Traxx?
I have been puzzling over this question for ever since that I watched it. I honestly can't say if I would recommend it or not. I think if you're a fan of the Naked Gun movies, like all of them, like all three of the Naked Gun movies, no matter how bad they got, and you're just like, I want something like this, but that takes itself somehow even more seriously, then I guess, yes, I would recommend it. On the other hand, I messaged you this. It has a kernel of genius to it.
Yes, it does.
And it gets so close to being just something that I want to wholeheartedly just recommend. And there are so many moments in it that even just thinking about them now have me cracking up. But it's like looking at it through a glass darkly. It's like there's something there, but it never quite entirely makes it to you as on the couch. It's a frustrating viewing, to say the least.
So that sounds like a weak recommend.
It's a weak recommend, I think.
I had seen this previously, a few years back, and I remembered it being like what you're talking about.
Right.
Like, just a little bit of, like, so close to being good,
Yeah.
but with, like, a lot of bad comedy.
Yeah.
But watching it this time, there was not as much bad comedy as I remember.
Not really, no.
And going in knowing what the movie was trying to do, now I can see it be like, okay, this is actually pretty neat. It's just that Shadoe Stevens can't act.
No, he can't.
The writing is not particularly good, even if it is clever at times. And
It's not just the writing, the editing is off.
the
too.
editing is bizarre.
It's like there are a bunch of really good jokes, but the timing on all of them is just slightly off. It's just so weird.
But I enjoyed Traxx a lot more this time around, to the point where I was debating whether it was a good bad movie, a bad good movie, or just a good movie.
Right.
And I haven't settled on it, but it's one of the three, so I would recommend Traxx.
Sure. Come watch Traxx and help us settle this Gordian knot of a film.
All right, now we're going to get into talking about what Traxx is about, going through the plot, and from there we'll jump off and discuss things.
So spoiler warning.
Yes. The movie begins immediately.
It's incredibly abrupt.
There's a title card for the De Laurentiis group.
Yep.
And then it's immediately a man with a gun held up to a cage with a monkey in it, shouting, "I got a monkey in here who's begging for his life." Oh, and by the way, this is somewhere in Texas, early 1984.
Yes, it does say that.
We're told there's two armed men in the pet store.
Yep.
We're told that they had shot an old lady and a puppy.
And then follows the best exchange possibly ever captured on film, where Shadoe Stevens tells us this. He says, he shot an old lady and a puppy. And what is... Did you happen to write down this line? I only wrote down the second part of it. The guy he's talking to says something about...
The old lady was just sport.
The old lady was just sport, but the puppy That was inspired.
Because now the man can plead insanity. The opening 5 minutes of this film are absolutely brilliant.
Oh my god, they're so good. They're so fucking good.
And here's the tightrope we need to watch. We need to walk with comedies is things that are stupid, that are like, why the fuck is this happening? This doesn't make sense.
Right.
There's always the danger that they are intentional jokes.
Yes.
So we need to. That's something we're going to have to watch, because Traxx's way to settle this situation is he sees a skateboard nearby.
Yep.
Grabs it, hitches his nightstick to a police cruiser, has told this plan to nobody, gives no signal to the car. Car begins moving.
Yeah.
Now, if that is intentional, that's hilarious.
Oh, I think it's intentional.
Okay.
Yeah.
That it's just like,
I think this,
just like everyone knows that action is happening.
Oh yeah, I think everything in this scene is very it's some of the tightest comedy in the whole movie. Is this one scene of absolute insane, just uber macho nonsense.
Uber macho and just outlandish. Like,
yeah.
Here's where the parody thing is, like, hostage situations are a dime a dozen. I've never seen it in a pet store with a monkey. A puppy has been shot. Traxx is sketching. He jumps through a plate glass window, shoots a man.
Yes.
The other guy's like, I give up, drops the gun, and Traxx, and just like in Shane, throws him a gun.
Yeah.
And the guy could have still just, like, dropped it.
He could have.
But he starts aiming on Traxx, and then there's a bunch of unsynced gunshots.
Yep.
Sound effects. They're so...
It's the implication is that the guy immediately starts unloading on Traxx, but is somehow so incompetent that the gunshots are just going everywhere but him. And then Traxx shoots him once, I think.
Yes.
And he goes... And there's a big fish tank on the wall that gets shattered, and it's breaking, and the water is coming down behind Traxx, like in the fountain scene in the first Die Hard, where the water is going everywhere, but it's just fish, just a bunch of dead fish.
Now here's my question.
Yeah.
You know how Quentin Tarantino likes to take things from other movies?
He does.
You've seen Pulp Fiction, correct?
Yes, I have.
Okay. You know when Vincent and Jules are in Brett's apartment and the guy comes out and is firing and misses him?
Yeah, the famous act of God.
Yes.
Scene. Yeah.
Do you think he stole that from Traxx?
I think it's undoubtedly he stole it from Traxx. Yeah.
I think this is a cult classic. They're
Is it?
It is. It legitimately is. There are people who love
never
this movie.
heard of this movie before.
It's a rare one.
You introduced it to me.
So after Traxx saves the day through murder,
right,
he gets dressed down by his boss. It's an 80s movie. You got to get dressed down by the boss.
The mayor is gonna have my ass over this, Traxx, and he's just talking to him about, like, this is the 80s, and every movie like this, they always have to mention the decade it's in. Yeah. This is the 80s. This is the 90s. This is the 80s. Criminals have the same rights as you and me. I'd like to hear that from the puppy's family.
Which is a brilliant,
the other most brilliant line ever written in this movie.
It's so, like, I wish he would have just kept being a cop.
Yeah, why did they have to complicate it?
It was a great, like, dirty, hairy, like...
Yes.
If this stuff was brilliant. So good.
Fucking wonderful. Wonderful. Complete with when he tells the other cop, I'm gonna go in, guns blazing, and the other cop says, old-fashioned, huh? And that's such a, like, Death Wish, dirty, hairy type of stupid justification for what he's about to do.
Yeah.
And I fucking love it. It's so good.
Also, Shadoe Stevens, like, really pulls off looking like a cop with that hat. He looks like super rugged.
Yeah, he looks like a Texas Ranger. You know, he's got like the big 10-gallon cowboy hat going on.
Looks like fucking Johnny Unitas out there on the field.
Yeah, he's got like this incredible jawline that's just like stabbing into everybody he talks to.
And then the rest of the movie, he looks like Steven Weber playing Vigo the Carpathian.
Oh my god, that's great. I would go Christopher McDonald playing Vigo the Carpathian, but yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm not as familiar with Christopher McDonald as you are.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm not as familiar with Steven Weber as you are, so
well,
I guess
we need to watch a lot of Wings. It sounds like this needs to become a Wings podcast.
You need to watch a lot more whatever Christopher McDonald is in. Flubber. You need to watch Flubber.
I guess I do need to watch. Wait, no, I know who Christopher McDonald is now.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can see it.
Yeah.
I can see it.
I kept thinking Christopher McDonald about Shadoe Stevens the whole movie, especially in... There's one scene where people are walking by him, he's like, don't come back to this place or I'll kill you. Don't come back to this place or I'll kill you. Don't come back to this place or I'll kill you. And every time I would...
That is real. Christopher McDonald stole Shadoe Stevens' shtick.
Everybody's stealing everybody's shtick.
He's the fucking...
Every time he said that, something like that, or the scene where he's threatening the other guy later in the erection scene, we'll get to it, all I could think was, like, I eat pieces of shit like you for breakfast.
So, it doesn't seem like Traxx is being fired, but it also seems like Traxx has been fired, or is quitting, or is something. But those words are never said. The chief is just like, you won't get a recommendation from me.
Which implies looking for a new job, but like you said, the words are never said. And then, also... Traxx has a theme song. He walks out talking about puppy families, and then suddenly it's just relax, here comes Traxx.
Just relax, here comes Traxx. If you fall through the cracks, you better call Traxx.
If you have trouble with some maniacs, send them to Traxx.
Which is, maniacs are reasonable. Like, you can just say, like, hey, I know you want to be a maniac here, but why don't you go see my friend Traxx? And then they all, like, Uber over because they're fucking crazy and they shouldn't be on the road. Right. They're responsible.
Yeah.
And they go, and Traxx goes and murders them. But yeah, I love...
It's like the tagline for Monster Squad. If you know how to call if you have ghosts, who do you call if you have monsters? This movie is, and now you know who to call if you have maniacs.
If you have maniacs,
send them to Traxx.
It sounds like really just like any problem. Like if you fall through the cracks, sound like oh, they didn't get my passport to me.
Like if you step on a crack and you break your mama's back, call Traxx because he knows how to chiropract.
Yeah. I fucking love personal theme songs so much. So much. They're so great.
Yeah.
More things need them.
We need to watch Yours World on this podcast. Have you heard of that?
No.
Yours World has a great theme song. It's Yours, the main character, obviously. Okay. And every time he does something awesome, like at one point, it's kind of a Conan the Barbarian knockoff, but also Star Wars somehow. At some point, he kills a giant bat monster and grabs onto it and uses it as a hang glider to swing in and kick some guy. And as he does it, his theme song kicks in. Yours world, he's the man. Yours world, he's the man. It's very Queen-light. It's awesome. I
couldn't concentrate on anything you were saying because I was trying to come up with the portmanteau of Conan the Barbarian and Star Wars. And I have Conan the Star Wardian.
You tried.
Yeah. But what if John Wick had a theme song?
Oh my god!
I want them to do that for the fourth movie so bad.
Oh god. John, where there's a wick, there's a way.
If a problem comes along, you must wick it.
Oh god.
Robert Davi plays Palucci in this movie.
Okay.
And he is, you remember in Die Hard when the FBI agents show up?
Oh,
Johnson.
Here's the thing. I know him because the first time I ever saw him was as the bad guy Sanchez in License to Kill. Okay. So whenever I see him, I always just think, hey, it's Sanchez. In fact, that's one of my notes here. I wrote, hey, it's Sanchez. So I don't know his real name. I just know him as Sanchez.
Okay.
But yeah, I forgot that he played Johnson in Die Hard. That's right. He did. I love him, and he's not the best, but I always enjoy him when he's around.
He does his thing very well.
He does that
if
one
you need
thing.
A heavy, who's doesn't have a lot of lines.
Yes,
he's perfect.
Another
if you need him to die in a vehicle,
He's also famous for being in the movie Showgirls, where he's famous for saying the line, "It must be weird not having people come on you."
That's a pretty good line.
That's a pretty good line. There are a lot of great lines in that movie. We should watch that for this podcast.
Sure.
Yeah.
Is it actually weird? I don't...
Oh, yeah.
Okay, sure. Let's watch Showgirls.
Yeah. Kyle MacLachlan fucks the main character with his belly button.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Never mind. I did not understand it for a while, but then I worked it out in my head.
Okay.
It is implied that Traxx was in Vietnam.
He was in some place with trees.
The chief goes like, "You're not in the jungle anymore, Traxx."
Oh, is that in the opening? Does he say that?
Yeah, that's the chief. Is like, so it's implied that like Traxx must have been in Vietnam,
right?
And then he goes back to war.
Yes,
he's in El Salvador in late 1984, as opposed to early 1984, which we just saw.
Yes.
Traxx bursts in, murders a bunch of dudes, and this is one of the most... There are three vivid moments from this movie for me.
Yeah.
The first is the opening,
yes,
with the hostage situation, and the second is Traxx is running through this battlefield. He sees a wounded
It's very Rambo
NPC,
Part 2.
Throws him over his shoulder, goes, lays him down, sees his reflection in a window, and sort of like checks himself out.
No,
like,
he actually has a comb in his belt. He pulls out a comb.
Yeah.
And brushes his hair slightly.
That's later. This part, he's just he just smiles at himself and just like brushes his luxurious locks. I'm like, that's so fucking funny. That's a brilliant bit. And I wish there was more of that to the character, like that sort of like narcissism of like, I'm so cool and hot and I'm the action dude.
I think that's the biggest weakness, not to jump ahead, but I think that's the biggest weakness of the whole film is that there's not a lot to Traxx as a character. Again, I keep going back to the Death Wish movies. The whole thing. In the first Death Wish, Charles Bronson is this like tortured, scary, almost psychotic dude who's like really mad and killing people over the death of or rape of his family. And then as the movies went on, Charles Bronson just stopped giving a shit like really quick, and he just started like doing this thing where he would laugh and joke around as he was killing people, even though he was supposed to be going for bloody vengeance. And just fucking a bunch of women, usually Charles Bronson's girlfriend at the time, so he could show off how young his girlfriend was. And that's kind of what I think they were going with, because like after that opening where he's really aggressive and grumpy, he just becomes this sort of preening, smiling, joking weirdo that didn't work in those movies, and it doesn't really work for me here, where he's constantly... It's almost like he's in on the joke, and you don't want that from a protagonist in a movie like this.
No, I don't want that, but I want him to be sort of more like just like outwardly stuck up about himself.
Oh, I agree. Yeah, if they had just chosen a character and stuck to it,
exactly.
That's the thing.
I think they were worried about making him too unlikable.
Yeah.
So they had to like lighten it all up. What I was really thinking in the first half or so of this movie is it almost felt like Deadpool. It had like a sort of self-awareness. It had a sort of over-the-topness, like a brushes of parody.
But here's the thing about Deadpool, and so as we mentioned in the beginning, at a certain point he retires from being a mercenary after he retired from being a cop, and he decides that he wants to get into the cookie baking business. For me, if you had made... The cookie baking thing comes right the fuck out of nowhere, which I think is probably the joke. But if they had made the cookie baking thing for him, if they communicated in some way that the cookie baking thing was really important to him, and that was really something he really wanted to do, and all of this was for that, I would have bought into his character more. The thing with Deadpool is in every one of those movies, he has a personal stake in the outcome. He does actually care what happens at the end of his own movie. And Traxx, to me, never seemed like he cared. He was cleaning up the town just because he needed some money, but he was only doing the cookie baking business because... Why?
Because cookies were the new frontier. They were going to be the next war. He says that. He's like,
he says that, but he seems really blasé about the whole thing.
Here's the entire thing.
Yeah.
Is that it's the 80s and Action Man is going to bake cookies, which is a girl thing, and that's the joke.
I get the joke, but
and then the joke is that he makes weird, stupid, shitty cookies.
Yes.
The cookie stuff is
the weakest part.
I mean, it's like a 3-way tie for worst jokes, but there's
this is my vote for worst joke is the cookies.
I think when we get to my worst jokes, you might change your mind.
Oh wait, are your worst jokes racist?
No.
Okay.
There's not. I don't think there's any racism in this movie. A little homophobia.
There's some racism.
Okay, you point out your racism when we get to it.
I will get to it. I made notes.
The movie goes out of its way to say Traxx isn't racist.
It does, but okay, we need to get somewhere fast.
Okay. So Traxx has settled down to bake cookies, and now he's somewhere near Hadleyville, Texas. He goes back to Texas. It's 1988. Traxx is baking those cookies, and it's not going well, Billy.
It's not going well.
Things are on fire.
There is a montage that feels like it's out of like a Suburban Commando movie or something. Like some
it's
really
Mr. Mom shit.
Yeah, it's like Mr. Mom shit, but like we don't know. Like if he has a conversation before he goes to cook the cookies with his friend, where he says it's the new frontier. It's like you have to have something you can have a dream about, and all this stuff. And if they had just had one line where the guy said, "You can't even cook, man," I can learn, but we're led to believe that he's thought about making cookies at least, but apparently he never even cracked open a cookbook because when he gets there. Like
he is shit in a blender. It looks like he's making a smoothie as part of the cookies.
Like the food that the Teletubbies eat is pouring out of every orifice in this kitchen.
He has a lot going on at one time.
It's lot going on. I don't know what kind of cookies he wants to make, but it's no kind of cookie I want to be a part of.
No,
it's like some bizarre, shitty macaroon shit.
Well, his house looks like a fucking meth shack.
It does,
and
it's not a nice place.
No, it's not.
Which is. It's funny because most main characters in the 80s lived in pretty nice places. Even the RV that Mel Gibson's character lived in Lethal Weapon looked nicer than this shithole.
There is one good joke in that cookie baking scene.
Okay.
He punches an egg to crack it. That shit is great.
If they had... That would have worked better if they'd stuck with his gruff persona from earlier.
Exactly, you need to pick a direction.
I want to make cookies. My fists don't make cookies any easier. I haven't opened my hands for anything but a gun in years. That would have been amazing. But no, they can't stick to any character. And it's just... I need stakes, movie. I need stakes so I can care about this. There's this great scene in... I'm not a fan of these movies, but there's a great scene in Harold and Kumar Go to White Castle where they get the quest to go to White Castle because they go to a drive-thru, and the guy in the drive-thru at this other restaurant, I don't even remember what, goes insane once he starts talking about White Castle burgers and how fucking amazing they are. And that gives them the impetus to go on this quest. If there had been any stupid scene like that, where it's just like cookies are the way of the future, and we had like a real... If we had stakes in these cookie shit, that could have made the movie work so much better.
What would have been great, especially for the time and for the parody, is a tragic backstory that somehow incorporates cookies.
Oh my god, yes.
Like, I had a daughter. I shot a kid, John. He was carrying cookies.
He was carrying cookies, looked enough like a gun to me.
Now I want to make cookies for all the live children that I didn't shoot.
It's a combination of Gene Wilder from Blazing Saddles and Al from Die Hard.
Oh, I thought you were going to say Gene Wilder from Blazing Saddles and Gene Wilder from Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory.
No.
He's making
cookies with schnozberries.
So,
which would be a step up from the jokes of this movie.
There are some good jokes. I'm going to point out every one of them.
Not regarding cookies, they're not.
No, that's true. That's true.
Like, I put chili in this cookie. Good for you.
Chili con cookie. That has the cadence of a joke.
It has the cadence of a joke.
That is said with the tone of a joke.
It is. Okay. Actually, the chili cookie leads to one of my more favorite moments, but we'll get
Hold
there.
on. We're gonna argue about that moment then.
Okay.
But Traxx is tuned to the exposition channel.
Yes.
And he's taking a break just at the time when the exposition channel does its exposition report.
Exposition
the
news.
Sheriff of Hadleyville is retiring, and he thinks the person who needs to take over for him is an old-fashioned type.
And that town tamer.
Town tamer. Hey, we know an old-fashioned type.
Yeah.
Traxx.
Traxx is an old-fashioned kind of guy.
Do we ever learn Traxx's first name?
Is Traxx not his first name?
I assumed it was his last name. I mean, it's not a name of any sort.
It's yeah.
Let me check.
I have no idea.
IMDb.
I'm gonna guess that whatever his other name is, it's something like Blade Traxxler, or something like that.
Oh, by the way, the movie is directed by Jerome Gary. It is written and produced by Gary DeVore.
Okay.
A whole lot of Garyan going on. Almost
a whole lot of Gary.
It's honestly suspicious to me.
How many Garys there are?
Yes. Hold on.
I have heard this is in the same universe as Jerry, so maybe that's why.
What's Jerry?
You never heard of Jerry?
What the fuck is Jerry?
Jerry is an art house film by Gus Van Sant. It's
oh, I have heard of that.
Yeah.
I thought Jerry with a J.
No, Jerry with a G.
Jerry with
that's
a G.
why I likened it to Gary.
I've never seen it.
Neither have I. I don't particularly want to.
I was thinking that I always want to do theme months. If we had started this sooner, like February could be Weird Love and like
sure
Japanuary.
I
also thought of Hate Month. Choose a movie that we know the other person is going to fucking hate. Just like
I would enjoy that because it would be an excuse for me to watch Jubilee again.
True. I mean, I already know what you can pull out.
Yeah.
You don't know what the fuck I can bring to the table.
I'm honestly scared about what you would pull out for me.
We don't have to do it. I'm just saying it might be fun in the way that things that aren't fun are fun.
Yeah. Let's get a good rhythm going before we get to
before we try to
fucking
destroy
each other. Yeah.
So, Traxx goes to Hadleyville.
Right.
And the town is a fucking hellscape.
I wrote, this town makes Gotham City look like a good place to live.
It's like if Gotham City were at a 10 all the time. It's
just constantly.
It's a montage of just like shit on fire. Someone is throwing out a window. This is now the second person.
A lot of defenestration going on in this
women
movie.
Being hit. Drug use, people being shot, robberies.
Just a casual cutaway rape scene that happens.
The police are taking somebody in, and
okay, that was the funniest thing. That was probably the other funniest thing in this movie was just two cops desperately trying to drag one suspect into the precinct as the chief is leaving. And they are just being thrown around like this guy was the Macho Man Randy Savage.
The guy, one of the cops goes through the plate glass in the front door. Third person in 11 minutes to go through glass.
Through the front door, and then another cop comes out and pulls him in. And then another cop...
They're up on the second level.
They're on the second level. Another cop smashes through the window on the second level and is hanging out. Another cop is thrown through the window and hangs on to the other cop, trying not to fall to their death. And then two other cops start fighting with the guy. The chief is leaving. This now is action happening in the background.
Just in the background, and it's so great.
It's so great.
I was confused as to whether there were two cops.
There were more than two.
No, I meant out the window.
Oh, there were two, yeah.
Because it looked like there were two, and then when it cut back to it, it looked there was just the one, and one was up. So now we're
during the conversation that happens while it's in the background, one of them falls out.
So, okay.
Yeah.
So that's 5 people.
That's at least 5.
In 11 minutes.
Yeah.
And Traxx comes up, and he's like, hey, Sheriff, I'll change the town for $10,000. Very specifically, $10,000. And he does this because he needs money to make cookies.
Right.
He needs to make $10,000 worth of cookies.
He's run out of cash. They have the conversation about being a town tamer, and the cop actually... And I couldn't tell if he was serious or not. Again, if this was a seriously intended line, this is really fucking funny. He says, send me a resume.
See...
I don't know if that was intentional or if he was just blowing him off.
No, it was meant to be like a joke, but it's also like an in-character joke where he's like sort of taunting him.
Yeah.
He wasn't being like, no, seriously, son. If he was like, well, let me see your I don't know.
There's so many lines. This movie is so tongue-in-cheek that sometimes there are things that happen. Like, going back for a second to the scene where they're in the jungle and everything's blowing up behind them while they're talking about cookies. The scene ends with Traxx putting his hand up and saying, "Taxi!" And I honestly expected a taxi to show up, but instead it just cuts to the Mr. Mom montage, and I was so confused as to why that happened. It's almost like that moment where you get to the end of a scene and one of the actors improvised "taxi" and they just left it in the movie for some reason.
I was expecting a taxi too. Like
I
really wanted.
Really expecting
if there was
a taxi,
it would have been great. But I think that scene ends with like a bunch of smoke, like something.
A bunch of billowing smoke, and I expected a taxi to come out of the smoke.
I liked how blasé they were about the explosions. They were just sort of strolling and talking. And,
yes.
But
also, speaking of timing, that's a good example of it, because you think two people having a blasé conversation about cookies while a bunch of explosions happen in the background sounds like a really funny scene, and it almost is. But here's the thing. The explosions don't start until halfway through the conversation. And then they suddenly start having explosions back there. So instead of it being, oh, this is so hilarious, it's like they forgot to do a joke with the scene, and then suddenly they realize, oh, we should put a joke here. And then they just suddenly have a joke there. And it's this kind of thing where there's a bunch of brilliant jokes that should be funny, but they're just ever so slightly off. It's like the later works of Mel Brooks. Everything is just so slightly off. It should be funny, but it's not.
Traxxula, dead and loving it.
There it is. Traxxula, dead and loving it.
Traxx saves a young black man.
He does.
Named Dieter.
Yes.
And just like conscripts him into taming the town.
Just conscripts. Yeah, and it was. I'm not sure because he had a feather in his hat. So I'm not sure if from that we were supposed to take that he was also a criminal who was being. And that was why he was being conscripted, like Rob Schneider and Judge Dredd, but or if he was just some black guy and now he's indebted to
Traxx
for
he
life.
He was being beaten up, wasn't he?
He was being beaten up by some crooks.
Traxx saved him.
Saved him.
So crooks wouldn't attack another crooks.
They might.
Why would they? They're on the same side. It's cops versus robbers.
It might. I was thinking that maybe he was like in the wrong turf.
Maybe. I don't know. Your headcanon for Traxx is too elaborate for me.
I've put way too much thought into this. But no, so that was something that kind of bothered me at first. Well, no, never stopped bothering me, is that the cowardly black sidekick cliche is really irritating just in any movie to me. And in this movie, it was also irritating because it was just sort of one of these things where you're like expecting them to turn it on its head or make a joke about it, but no, it's just a cliche that they include. It's kind of like the movie Cabin in the Woods, where they're making fun of horror cliches, but every once in a while they'll just have a horror cliche and they never comment on it, and you're like, is it the fact that it's here supposed to be the joke? Because you need to work harder for me.
Do you not like Cabin in the Woods?
I love Cabin in the Woods.
Okay, I wanted to make sure.
But it's a flawed piece. There are some moments there where I don't want to get too far into Cabin in the Woods because that's a whole other episode.
Yeah, fuck you and hating Cabin in the Woods.
I'm not hating Cabin in the Woods. I'm just saying that there are some times where movies want to make fun of cliches, but then they'll forget to make fun of a cliche. They'll just include it. And it just gets irritating to me when that happens, especially when it's such a cliche that I find so irritating, like this particular one.
Okay, yeah. Dieter's not great.
Yeah,
but at least I don't know. It's an unnecessary character.
Yeah,
he's just there to tell Traxx things, but we never.
He's there so that Traxx can talk to him. Really?
I guess.
Yeah.
They go to Jerome's stud farm, and outside there's a sign that says "Gorls." Gorls, Gorls.
But yeah, so immediately after picking up his sidekick for the movie, they go to a brothel.
Yep, Jerome Stud Farm.
Yeah.
And to me,
Yes.
Stud Farm implies men.
You would think.
Also, why does this apparently illegal brothel just have a giant neon sign that says Jerome Stud Farm?
Because it's Evil Town, property Sinsberg.
Okay.
Yeah, this is the Sodom and Gomorrah. Like, this is just how bad things have gotten.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
I buy it.
Yeah.
It's
So
the chief, new chief, black chief, chief.
yeah, Black Chief.
From now on, chief is just Traxx's chief.
Yeah.
Traxx's new, the Hadleyville chief.
Yeah, the only important chief in the movie, really.
What the fuck was I just trying to say?
I don't know. You just kept saying Black Chief over and over.
Bitch. I was trying to clarify which chief, and then I forgot what I was trying to say.
Anyway, they go to the brothel, and he just starts cleaning house. And this is where the difference between it being an 80s movie and a now movie start to become apparent. Because there are certain things that nowadays I think action movie heroes wouldn't care as much about that action movie heroes in the 80s really cared about. So, for instance, prostitution has become a much more debated topic.
Yes.
In modern day times. Drugs have become a much more debated topic. Strippers have become a much more debated topic.
Yeah, I want to talk about that when we get there.
Yeah, but these are all things that in the 80s apparently are just, especially in this movie, are marks of sin and vice and terrible things. And vice in particular is just a bad thing to have. These prostitutes are in their place, doing their business, taking all these schlubby guys up to their rooms to have their way, and there's a lot of drug use going on, and Traxx just comes in and is like, not here, and starts flipping the tables on the Pharisees and just dragging them all out.
Like Christ in the temple.
Like Christ in the temple.
Traxx bursts through a door like the Kool-Aid Man.
Like the Kool-Aid Man.
There's some goons in there. One goes through a window. We're up to 6.
Oh.
17 minutes.
I'm glad you kept count.
Oh, I kept count because that was something that I remember from my first watch. Is like, holy shit, people are going through glass left and right.
Right.
So now we're at 6, 17 minutes in. There's a lot of close-ups of Shadoe Stevens' face in this movie.
Just so many.
It's very wide. It's very beefy.
He's a very wide, beefy man, and he keeps... And like, there's so many things of him. He's a lot like Zorro. Every time something happens that he succeeds in, he's smiling. He's always, oh, this guy flew through a roof. We have to cut to a close up of Shadoe Stevens smiling at that. This lady was naked when she ran by. Have to cut to a close up of Shadoe Stevens smiling at that.
I have a theory.
Okay.
That Traxx is a war criminal.
Oh.
That Traxx has done, like, terrible things, like,
sure,
in Vietnam, probably, during his mercenary work.
Of course.
Because later we see him riding around on the hood of his truck, indiscriminately firing a heavy assault weapon at pedestrians.
Oh, yeah.
And fucking loving it.
Oh, yeah.
Traxx revels
yes.
in mayhem and death.
This is, if this is a satire... and we didn't realize it when watching it. This is a great...
It is a parody, not a satire.
But if it is secretly a satire, it's one of this movie treads that sort of Frank Miller line for me, where on the one hand, it's either celebrating the cliches of this genre or it's deeply satirizing them, because there's certain like very Reagan era attitudes that these movies have that this movie is neck deep in, and it's either satire or they really mean it, and one of them I'm all on board with, and the other one I'm very not okay with, and one of those is this incredibly fascist idea that if you don't like something about your neighborhood, it's up to this one white guy with a bunch of guns and a militia of 2 people to just go in and wipe out all the scum. Just take out all the scum, which is just a lot of poor people, and just get rid of all of them. And Yeah, it's an attitude that was very popular in action movies at one time, and I don't know if this movie is satirizing it or just going balls deep into it. I can't tell.
And that's the tightrope we walk with this, where it really just depends on our will, whether we want to give them the benefit of the doubt. I was looking at Gary DeVore's IMDb, which I should have done before, and trying to see
get a sense of him,
what else
kind of stuff he does. Yeah, that was a note I wrote during the bit where Shadoe Stevens Traxx is up on the car, shooting indiscriminately at people, and then like maybe 2 cuts later, we cut to the entire town cleaning up. There are flowers everywhere. Everything is great. And I wrote the note, hooray for gentrification.
Yeah. It's a solid 45 minutes later.
Oh, okay.
Gary DeVore, writer of Traxx,
Yes.
also wrote the Gregory Hines and Billy Crystal movie Running Scared.
Oh! I grew up on that movie. I haven't seen that in ages.
Is that good?
I remember really enjoying it, but to be fair, it was the first movie I can remember seeing where I saw full female nudity,
Okay.
a lot of blood, and it was also, I remember it being the first movie that I ever saw where the guns had fire coming out of the end. Most of the movies with guns that I'd seen before that were either laser gun movies or old movies where the guns just had like a little smoke coming out.
Gotcha.
So it was the first time I'd ever seen anyone fire a submachine gun and have like fire come out of the end, and I thought that was the coolest thing I'd ever seen. Also, I was a big Billy Crystal fan from Monsters, Inc. at the time.
Okay.
So watching Mike Wazowski just blow motherfuckers away was great. And also, boobies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Looking at this guy's...
I still own it, but I have no idea if it's good.
So based on Running Scared,
Yeah.
what do you think about the politics of Traxx?
I need to watch...
You're our Gary DeVore expert.
I need to watch Running Scared again. I have a feel... If Running Scared is exactly the way I remember it, then I don't think he's the kind of person to think through the implications of what he writes. I think he's just in it for the 80s excess of it. Because Running Scared is a movie that literally ends with a bunch of cocaine just raining down from the sky. And so inside they blow up a bunch of bags of cocaine and it's just raining down. And so I think that's it's just from that Miami Vice of just like, we need a lot of shit in the frame.
Yeah, and scanning over his other writing credits, it seems...
Does that seem to bear up?
Yeah.
Okay.
But I'm going to pretend that it's like...
It's a deep satire.
Well, here's the thing, is, again, it's the problem of it doesn't lean into anything. If it leaned more into, like, this fascist nightmare, as you were saying...
Yeah.
That would be fucking hilarious.
It
because
would be.
It's that stuff is... If they had committed to anything...
If this were a Paul Verhoeven film...
Yes. Oh my god, I would love Paul Verhoeven's tracks. There'd be way more nudity.
Another Paul Verhoeven movie, Showgirls.
Yeah. Oh shit. we can milk Paul Verhoeven for a lot.
Oh yeah, Paul Verhoeven is a whole thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's a great part in the brothel after there's 3 goons that he like scares, beats up. Yeah. And he pushes them down the stairs, and all 3 of them are tumbling together like over top of each other. Mm-hmm. And it looks awkward, but it's this great attempt to make a live-action cartoon.
Yes.
Because we've seen that so many times in cartoons. It doesn't work as well with real bodies.
No.
But that's, like, he's trying to make this cartoon thing. And again, if there was more of that.
Yes.
Because there's other Looney Tunes moments like that.
Yeah. Yeah. If it was a little bit more like Naked Gun, or a little bit more like a Paul Verhoeven movie, if it made a choice about what it wanted to be, we could have a real classic on our hands. As it is, this is strictly cult classic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it could have been... Yeah, like you said, this is very close to being a great movie.
Yes. Yeah, so then he's kicking open the doors and shooing all the prostitutes out. making his joke.
He doesn't chew the prostitutes out. He's
shooing
Oh,
the
okay.
prostitutes out. And making his joke that's apparently just for him about plugging a toilet.
Toilets are plugged, everybody out.
Ha ha ha, mob lingo. And then he kicks open a door, and then it's a brightly colored daycare. It's like every daycare center you've ever seen, with a nice old lady taking care of a bunch of kids. And it's not made clear if these are the prostitutes' kids and they're just like, this is where they keep them while they're working, or if this is just, one of the rooms got rented out as a daycare center and the kids have to walk through this den of sin every day to get to the daycare center.
I assumed they were the children of the prostitute.
I did assume that, but you never know.
I assumed it was like a workplace benefit.
Right.
I like this joke.
I like it too.
It's a
really
great parody thing where it's just like, that's a good joke.
And then I think one of the thugs goes in and starts threatening the kids.
Yeah, one of the thugs goes in, because finally, after Traxx has been doing this, there's a response of any kind.
Right.
So some goons come, they go into the daycare, one of them takes a hostage, grabs the kid, he has the gun up to his head, and how does Traxx solve this situation?
Just, if I remember correctly, he just blows him away.
He just kicks open the door and shoots him.
Right.
And then
hostages are minor annoyances to Traxx.
Shoots him through a window.
Of course.
7 people. 18 minutes and 45 seconds into the movie. That's all the farther we are.
And then he gives the lines like, that's what happens when you're naughty.
That's what happens when you don't behave.
When you don't behave. And all the kids, they're not even traumatized. They just turn to him smiling their little toothless grins.
They love it. They're so...
and the old lady's like, oh, my hero. It's just like, wow. And again, this is one of those jokes that's so close to the actual thing. Because if you go back and you watch those terrible, terrible Death Wish movies, this actually happens in those films. Throughout the movie, he keeps doing these horrible acts of violence, and children and old people keep looking at him and just smiling and nodding and like, yes, what a hero.
Anytime Traxx is...
This is straight out of Death Wish. Straight out of Death Wish.
Anytime Traxx creates havoc, the neighbors love it.
Oh,
it's
they cheer.
Old white couples looking out their windows, smiling. Like,
thank God he's getting rid of all them ethnics.
It's that man from Hollywood Squares killing the blacks.
Oh, fuck.
So Traxx and Dieter are driving away.
Yeah.
And here we get another good bit.
Okay.
There's a nice shot.
Yes.
There's a thug who's fiddling around with his gun. He's having a hard time with it.
Yes.
Traxx drives past, then he backs up, grabs the gun from the thug, and is like, going like, this is what you need to do. And there's a guy who comes from the other side of the car with a shotgun. Dieter ducks, and there's a real nice shot where Traxx just like points the gun over, blows that guy away.
Yeah.
It's very nicely framed.
It's a wonderful scene. It could be in this, and again, it's another scene that could legitimately be in any comedy, action comedy, or any actual action movie, where the guy's just fumbling trying to reload his gun. Traxx fixes it, shoots this guy in this great shot, as you said, well framed, and
the only great shot in the movie.
Yep, and he hands it back, and then he says, If you're the jittery type, a revolver's much easier under stress," and then drives away. It's a scene that could almost work with any. It could work with Deadpool.
Yeah.
It could work. Honestly, it could work with Agent Cooper. I could see Agent Cooper doing that with someone.
Absolutely.
Discussing different kinds of firearms for people. Like it's such a great moment.
It is.
And I completely forgot to note it, and I hate myself.
It's like I said, I take extensive notes when I do my thing. It would also help more if Shadoe Stevens was a good actor.
It would. It would help.
Sell it a little bit better.
Yeah.
We meet our villain.
Oh, right before we meet our villain, there's a great scene where we open on a blind guy just walking down a sidewalk with his cane, and the bad guys show up, and he instantly has a heart attack and keels over and dies. And that's the scene. I just wanted to note that happened because it was one of those things that went by so quickly. I was like, I had to write it down because I knew I would think I had dreamed it if I didn't.
And that's such a bizarre thing to write into the movie. Like
it's such a great bizarre
it's
moment.
it's almost like a joke. Again, going back to this being a cartoon on some levels, that's like a sight gag that would happen on any cartoon, just like a side thing.
Yeah. He just keels over dead. It's great.
Palucci, played by Robert Davi, gives one of my favorite lines. How'd an asshole like you get in my mob? Which he says to his driver.
Yes. Because his driver closes the door on his clothes and when he's trying to get out of his limo. And I think this was supposed to be a running gag, because there's a scene later in the movie where, way later in the movie, where he gets out of the limo again and pulls his clothes away from the door really abruptly and is like looking at his chauffeur, the asshole, like glaring daggers at him as he closes the door, which I think was supposed to be a callback, or maybe it was just him doing his acting. But it felt like it was like this was supposed to be the culmination of a running gag, but there was only those two instances of it. So
that's still it's a callback. It's
a callback, I guess.
Robert Davi has another beautiful line which he says to one of the gorgeous women who are attending to him.
Yes.
You're beautiful. I'm going to name a wine after you. That's a brilliant line.
That's a great line.
The other tricky thing with comedies is, and this is going to sound incredibly pretentious, is when some people write a joke in a movie like this, I don't know if they understand why it is funny.
Yeah.
Like, I can see them being like, oh, this is a funny thing for him to say, but I'm not sure if, like, he thought about, like, just the...
It's like, does explaining the joke make it not funny also work inside of a writer's head? Like, is that...
Yes.
Do writers just sort of think of funny things and let the critics sort them out for themselves? Or... I don't know. I'm not good at writing comedy.
There's another good bit where he gets a phone call, like, from a man named Wendell, who talks very strangely.
He does.
Telling him that Traxx is in town. Like,
oh, no, I think Wendell is the guy whose gun he fixed.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, because it cuts to him in the phone booth, and he says, "This is just a friendly warning. I'm getting out of town, but you should know that this guy went in and dismantled your entire operation on his own." And then it cuts back to the phone, and it's got the weird voice on it.
And all throughout the scene, he's getting like a manicure, and like someone's doing his hair and
someone's
stuff.
Doing his hair.
The barber's annoying him.
Yep.
So after he hears about Traxx, he tells his Weasley little accountant, who is wonderfully cast.
Yes.
He says,
a great character.
Kill Traxx. You know what? Kill Wendell. Kill the barber. And the accountant takes the barber and is like, come along with me.
Come on.
And you hear a gunshot
in the background.
There's a lot of good bits in this movie.
There's some great moments.
Traxx and Dieter baking cookies outside, like they have a little camp. I don't know why.
Yeah, they just have a little camp somewhere. Apparently, Traxx doesn't live near enough to town so that they can stay at his place, so they're just camped in the middle of the woods somewhere.
Yeah. And there are no establishing shots in this movie.
No.
I mean, there are some.
Very few.
But we're just shown Traxx, like, are they outside? Why are they outside? It doesn't...
He has, like, a fire with a stick and shit, and you're just making... And this is where, like, the running gag begins of this man has really strange ideas about how to make cookies. And he's just putting... I don't even remember the shit that he puts
cough
in
syrup
these.
and laxative.
Oh my god, yeah, because he's like, I want to corner the medicinal market, he says at some point.
And, we learn a little bit about Traxx. He never graduated high school.
He didn't.
But Dieter went to junior college, took some business classes.
And then Dieter just goes into this backstory that is just upsettingly dark for no reason.
I wasn't sure if I was understanding correctly. It sounds like Dieter's father murdered his entire family.
Yes, and tried to kill him, and he survived.
Okay.
He was the only survivor.
Because there's like one line where he's like,
yeah,
my dad, and it's like, it's like, I don't even remember exactly what the line is, but it's not like overt. Like I said, I was kind of confused. Like,
it's very casually said.
It's very casual. It's very quick, and then it's just like the conversation runs on to like
something.
Traxx's stupid fucking cooking.
Talking
like,
about stupid cookies.
This person you sort of kidnapped has a horribly tragic backstory.
Horrible.
For no reason.
Yeah.
By the way, does not add anything or
It doesn't. It's just there. And I'm like, why? Why isn't this Traxx's backstory? Why isn't this anyone who matters backstory? Why is this anybody's backstory?
To be fair, nobody in this movie matters.
That's true. That's a good point.
You could make an argument for Traxx, but even then, I don't know that it's 100%.
Hey, he has a song.
True. I could make a song about fucking Dieter.
Yeah.
Dieter, get a little sweeter every day. He's my Dieter, babe. There's an amazing scene that comes next.
Yeah.
Traxx and Dieter are out and about.
Yes.
And they're attacked by a car with seemingly about 10 goons inside of it.
It has the accountant in it and a bunch of goons that he gathered up to take on Traxx.
And Traxx, they're behind Traxx, and they're firing their guns.
Yes.
And Traxx pulls a brilliant maneuver. This is like straight out of Bullet.
Right.
He gets in the other lane, moves in front of the car that was ahead of him, and that's what he does.
Okay.
There's a bizarre insert shot of tires running over a burning cigarette that is burned fully to ash.
That was so weird. And then the bad guys are driving along, and some poor woman in a hospital stretcher is being dragged across the street. This sounds like I'm explaining it bad. I need you to understand, this happens apropos of nothing. Nothing connects to anything. The car is driving down the street. Traxx has gotten out of the way. A stretcher is suddenly in the street. The car rams into the stretcher.
The paramedics get the fuck out of the way.
The paramedics just leave this poor woman. I think she might be pregnant. I'm not sure.
I don't think she was pregnant. She wouldn't be strapped to a gurney if she was pregnant.
Maybe it was a very violent pregnancy.
Maybe.
But the people are running. The paramedics just leave her. They run away. The car crashes into the stretcher like the stretcher was a brick fucking wall.
She slides up onto she is still strapped to the gurney. She slides up onto the car, and then the car rolls over.
It just rolls
on
over
top of the woman. End of scene.
Does it explode? I forget.
It does not explode.
Okay.
I laughed out loud.
Oh my god.
I laughed out loud.
I didn't laugh out loud, but my jaw was on the floor. I couldn't believe what I had just seen.
So hilarious and meaningless.
It was so excessive.
This is a nihilistic world that we are viewing, where just hellscapes are common and death is random and ever present.
Yeah. And it's just, and then, okay, right after this is the scene where suddenly he's just standing up through the sunroof of his car, firing nonstop out of a chain gun into the city streets. And this is where I wrote down the sheer amount of gunfire in this movie is hilarious as a concept on its own. It's not a thing where you're like that you are gut bustingly laughing at it, but just the amount of gunfire in this movie is something to behold. He was literally shooting so much I could no longer register it as gunfire. In my ears, whenever they cut away, I was like, "There's a helicopter." Like, it was just so ever present. The gunfire in the scene is just literally like nonstop, forever. Like an element in a Pink Floyd song. It was just forever. And I just realized that we missed something. We skipped over something. So there's a subplot while this is going on. As if this wasn't enough, there's a subplot where the cops and the mayor, who is this lovely actress,
Priscilla Barnes,
yep, are reacting to the event. So they have a press conference.
They have their Batman conference.
They have their Batman press conference where they ask if there's a dirty cop on the force who's doing this. And the chief says, no, it's not. And the mayor is trying. The chief is very bad with the press. He keeps swearing and being very defensive about everything because he knows what's going on and he likes what's going on, but he can't say that outright. And the mayor is trying to. It also likes what's going on, but is trying to be on crowd control. And there's this great line where one of the reporters asks if the crime was racially motivated. And the mayor says, "Oh, don't worry, it was very racial." someone from every race got hit, so no one race can bitch about discrimination. And I thought that was a great line.
It was.
That did make me laugh.
And Priscilla Barnes delivered it well.
Priscilla Barnes' performance in this movie,
probably the best.
She is throwing everything that she has at the wall.
And she was not the original choice for that role.
Was she not?
She was a replacement.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Well, she is trying to wring every tiniest bit of comedy that can be gotten out of the script out of it.
She commits
100%, and I commend her for that. There are times where it goes a little bit too far, but I feel that that's more the fault of the script than her. I think she's trying to sell what it's giving her as much as she can.
I agree.
Yeah.
Palucci calls for the Guzicks.
Okay, this is the racist bit.
Okay.
Yeah.
They're not Mexican, though.
Are they not?
See, I was confused about that, too.
Okay.
They were singing in Spanish, but only one of them looks Mexican or Hispanic in any way.
Okay.
I don't know.
They had, like, I remember one of them having a bandolier of bullets, which is a Mexican stereotype in Hollywood.
True.
There's the whole thing. They just... If they weren't Mexican, I didn't catch it. But there was enough signifiers and, like, coding there that it felt very much like an old Western movie where the badges... We don't need no stinking badges.
Yeah,
the
one
crew were coming into the town, and it made me very uncomfortable. I wrote the note, this is the only movie that Donald Trump has ever seen, and he thought it was a drama. Because the rhetoric around certain conservative folk, a lot of conservative folk these days, was very represented in that scene of just like this fictionalized version of the American border were just like, and they're not sending us their best, they're sending us their rapists and all this stuff, and it was very uncomfortable.
I got the impression, because it's mentioned that they killed a Little League team.
Yes,
so I assume
they
that
were
they
banished
went
to Mexico.
Yeah, I assume they
That is mentioned later, and that's when I started to realize maybe I'd gotten the wrong idea.
Yeah, I don't think...
But at first I was very uncomfortable
with
the whole
thing. It's very unclear and very confusing.
Yeah.
But...
Again, don't think the filmmakers thought this through. I just think they wanted to put a bunch of shit on the screen. But they certainly made that Border Patrol joke, and that was enough.
And at the border, they hand the border guard a bundle of lit dynamite.
Yes.
He shouts, "Ay, Chihuahua!"
Oh, God.
And throws it into a Mexican food stand that's right there, and there's a huge explosion.
Yeah.
And again, this is cartoon shit.
Oh, yeah. This is some,
vaguely racist.
Yeah, but so Speedy Gonzales, so.
Yeah, and he's fucking president of Mexico now.
Speedy Gonzales is president of Mexico?
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
Presidente Gonzales.
Oh, good for Speedy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's the first mouse president ever.
That's awesome.
I mean, I guess. He flaunted the laws a lot. I don't know that he would be a good ally for America going forward.
Okay. Well,
I don't think he's going to pay for the wall.
We're not being a very good ally to them at the moment.
True.
Yeah.
Now we're at a strip club.
We're at the strip club.
Which are not illegal.
Were they illegal in the 80s or something?
No, because every 80s action movie has a strip club scene.
That's true. Yes, they do.
Like, this is peak 80s-ness. Like, you need to go to a strip club.
Yes. And I said, this is also when we get our first bit of nudity in the movie. And I wrote the note, "Oh, hello, boobies." But, like, they're just suddenly, like, in the prostitute scene, every single one of those prostitutes was wearing enough clothes to pass censor. And then suddenly we just cut to boobs right there. And I was like, really? I didn't know that this movie would have that.
That's the only instance, though.
Is it really?
I believe so.
I couldn't remember.
And it's very quick. There's not much. I was surprised by it, too. I was like, I thought they were going to try to... Despite the enormous amount of violence...
Right.
I thought they were going to try to, like, go for a PG-13.
You would think.
But no, yeah. It's bizarre.
Yeah.
And he forces everybody to leave the strip club, or if they come back, he'll kill them.
Yep. No, he tells everybody, if you come back to the strip club, I will kill you. And then he says that to every single person as they leave the bar. Oh, no, first he has this great moment where he tells everyone he says, "Good people go to one side of the bar, scumbags go to the other," and everyone goes to one side. He's like, I didn't know you were all scumbags. And then they all run to the other side.
And then it's just, again, no establishing shots. New location, drug crime. A bomb comes through the window. It's like a white box that says, "This is not a bomb."
That's right.
And the bomb explodes, and the neighbors are so fucking happy.
They're so fucking happy.
They're so happy.
Yeah. That's where I really drew the connection to the Death Wish movies at that point, was just the old people cheering him on. I was just, oh my god, this is like that. There's this great scene in Death Wish 3, I think, where a mugger runs past Charles Bronson on the street and just grabs his bag, and Charles Bronson looks at him really annoyed and just pulls out a handgun and shoots him in the back. And then just goes over, picks up the bag, and the entire street erupts into spontaneous applause, and he just walks away from the body, waving behind at them, and walks on. That scene could be in this movie with no... But the problem is that Death Wish 3 thinks it's serious, and this movie knows it's funny, and I don't... And there's so little difference.
Yeah. It's... Again, like I was saying, like, does the person who wrote this know why it is funny?
I think they must. I think they must on some level. Because that opening is so genius. But at the same time, wow. This movie is dumb.
It is.
Yeah.
I've never seen any Death Wish movie.
They're not worth it.
Okay.
But... yeah, they're not worth it.
Well, it's a fucking treasury of reference for you today. Like, you're drawing on it endlessly.
That's what I kept thinking about in these movies. The opening made me think of Naked Gun, and then everything after that made me think of Death Wish and a little bit of Delta Force, but I'm less familiar with that one.
Yeah, I have not seen Delta Force either.
Yeah.
One of my favorite shots of the movie now.
Yeah.
We see a shop window.
Yes.
It says porno sex.
That's right.
It says porno sex. And I love that, but the camera pulls out a little bit more, and you see it says hot porno sex. And then it pulls out a little bit more erotic hot porno sex.
That is a classic Looney Tunes joke there.
Well, I don't know that it was even it wasn't like purposeful pullouts. Like, this was just
wasn't.
The full...
It was just if it had been like that would have been a solid Bugs Bunny gag, but
just the phrase porno sex just makes me laugh.
Then we cut to after getting what are they called again? The Gadzooks?
The Gooziks.
The Gooziks. The Gooziks they got the Gooziks over the border. They're taking the Gooziks into the city, and it's a long fucking road trip to take them into the city. Meanwhile, there's also an intercut during the scene which shows that Traxx has started hanging people in the streets from street lamps, which is terrifying. And I thought that was a scene, because it was so closely intercut, I thought that was a scene showing that the bad guys had arrived and they'd started a killing spree. No, that's the good guy.
It's a fucking dystopian hell.
Yeah.
Like, there's smoke everywhere. There's litter, abandoned cars.
This is what Captain Jack rides his boat past in the beginning of Pirates of the Caribbean. This is the scene from Jojo Rabbit where the little kid's looking at the dead bodies hanging up.
Yeah.
Like, spoilers if you haven't seen Jojo Rabbit in theaters now, but God, that's some horrifying nightmare fuel.
But
and it's the good guy.
It's
I think there are even signs hanging on their neck for their crimes.
But
and
here's
shit.
the fucking thing: is if this is intentional, if this is like parody, this is fucking brilliant.
This is brilliant satire.
But again, it doesn't lean into it at all. That's the problem. Like,
no.
If it leaned in, if it continued with this thing where it's like, there's no more crime, but it's just like Hadleyville's just this. It's like Detroit and RoboCop. It's just empty and fucking. Well, it was Detroit and RoboCop. Now it's like, I don't know. I Am Legend.
And then the scene immediately afterwards is Pleasantville.
It's there. Everyone's super happy.
Yeah.
The druggist, the drugstore owner gets his redemption as children return his comic books.
There was a brief cutaway of a bunch of kids painting, doing graffiti on this guy's wall, and then it cuts back and other kids are painting his wall over again, and it's all fixed. Aw, thank God for 50s era aesthetics. Anyway, so they're coming into town, and they're playing a game with the accountant. The accountant is in the car with them, and they got tired of the accountant because they kept shooting into the air and throwing grenades everywhere and dynamite. And the guy was like, the boss doesn't really want any unnecessary expenditures on this trip.
He has a great line reading of, bullets cost money. And I wish it just ended there.
I do wish.
That would have been like a great joke of just like, don't do that, guys. That's money you're shooting.
But they've been singing the whole time in Spanish at first, and they make him sing with them, and then when it cuts back to them, they're singing Old MacDonald Had a Farm, which is hilarious. That to me, the joke was that they've gone through all the songs that they know. They're now on Old MacDonald Had a Farm, but it continues into this weird, bizarre torture game where they're holding the accountant's finger and they're making him do the animal noises. And if he doesn't get the animal noise right, they break a finger. And then they go to Gazelle, and he's like trying to guess what the Gazelle's voice is. He can't figure it out. They say, "No, Gazelle ain't got no voice box," and break his finger. And I just loved that line.
I hated that bit.
You hated that bit?
I hated that bit.
Okay. I enjoyed it.
That's okay.
I just enjoyed Gazelle ain't got no voice box.
That was a nice line reading. I also liked the accountant's acting when they made him sing the Spanish song, and he finally agreed to do it. He should have been Traxx.
That would have been really funny if Traxx was just like this schlubby, George Costanza type guy. I've been out of the game for a little while, guys.
I would love that movie.
That would be an amazing movie.
We should make that movie.
We should. Yeah.
I'm not just saying that because I am a schlubby guy. Hey, Billy, I wonder who should play the fat guy. Who should play the fat guy, Billy? There's a press conference with the police chief and Priscilla Barnes. The chief just keeps going, bullshit!
Yeah, because the press keeps accusing him of being behind this in some way, and he keeps saying, bullshit, bullshit! And then a lone hero stands in the crowd. Because Traxx has infiltrated the press conference to, I guess, make sure they're still on his side? I don't fucking know.
I think you want to ask pro-Traxx related questions.
And he's got Groucho Marx glasses on or something.
He has glasses, he has a fake mustache.
Yeah, yeah. And he has what do you personally feel about the efforts of this vigilante who's now called the Cowboy? By the way, by the end of this movie, he's been named by the press the Cowboy, which happens off screen. We don't hear about this. They just suddenly start calling him the Cowboy, apropos of nothing.
Palucci and his gang also call him the Cowboy.
Yeah, Palucci and his gang. Everyone calls him the Cowboy all of a sudden. In one scene, his sidekick there says, you need to have some sort of logo so people know who you are. That's why Batman wears the bat. And he says, I'm not going to wear a t-shirt with my face and name on it. And then, at least in the final scene, if not a few scenes before that, suddenly he's wearing a t-shirt with a picture of him on it doing the, I guess it's the picture that they took in the stripper club.
Yeah,
it's
the stripper club
in the stripper club. The
stripper association.
The stripper association. The stripper league in the stripper league building. Yeah, but doing the Big Trouble in Little China poster pose, and with his name on it, literally, and it's like, oh my god, this is where we are now. But so he's become a superhero at this point called the Cowboy.
One, I love that he wore his own shirt.
Yes.
Again, that's what with the his preening in the reflection in the war zone.
Yes,
they could have gone in that direction where he's just a narcissist. He should have been his own shirt the entire time.
Instead, he had to be talked into it.
Yeah,
yeah.
It's a hilarious joke.
Yeah.
Two.
They should have had a sequence where he gets up in the morning and he's getting ready for the day, but he has to spend 10 hours quaffing and spraying the Aquanet and getting the mullet exactly right.
That would
have been amazing.
He has 24 different lilac, very tight t-shirts.
He wears a skin mask at night.
By the way, you could buy a Traxx t-shirt for $5.95.
Can you really?
Well, that was what Dieter was selling them for.
Oh, okay.
That's a great deal for a t-shirt.
That's right. At a certain point, we find out that just outside of the woods where they're staying, right in town, they have a little stand where they're selling Traxx merchandise, which is bizarre. And it's only in like one scene, I think.
I think it's in a couple. It comes back at the end. But, if the police wanted to find Traxx...
Which they clearly don't.
Or if the press wanted to find him...
Yeah, more
seems
likely.
like good... Seems like it'd be a safe bet.
Might be a clue.
Hold on.
Okay.
Very important question.
Yes.
What if Shadoe Stevens was Jack Burton in Big Trouble in Little China?
Okay.
Better movie or worse movie?
I haven't seen Big Trouble in Little China yet.
Oh, okay. We need to watch that then.
I know we do, and I've heard from my brother Alex that it's an amazing movie. Shadoe Stevens, definitely worse. Definitely worse.
I mean, he is up against Kurt the Hurt Russell.
Exactly.
Yeah, no, it would be worse.
Kurt Russell is my boy.
Yeah, I'm not going to argue that.
I love Kurt Russell.
I just like to imagine what could have been.
Yeah, it's fun. Like, I still like to imagine what would have happened if, Tom Selleck had been Indiana Jones, or Kurt Russell had been Han Solo. Both worse, I think, but,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. Tom Selleck as Indiana Jones would be interesting to see.
I think he would be fine. I've seen his audition tape, and he was pretty good in it. But the problem is, he's just a... What?
I'm imagining Tom Selleck's audition tape just being him, like, jerking around the room in a fedora, like, pretend cracking a whip, going like, ha! Ha! That's all I can picture right now. It's just like snakes, ha!
Well, my point is, he would have been a good choice for it. I just think that Harrison Ford is a much better actor than him and brought stuff to the role that he couldn't have.
Yeah.
I think it would have been perfectly fine. Just like I think Kurt Russell would have been perfectly fine as Han Solo. I just think Harrison Ford is a much better actor than either of them. And he brings something that they don't.
Sure.
Yeah. But
okay.
I mean, that's debatable.
There's a montage where Traxx and Dieter dance by the lakeside.
Oh my god, yes. Oh, yes. Yeah. They just dance, and they keep showing... This is during the bit where we see the city being rebuilt, and they're just dancing by the lakeside. Just dancing. And it's sad. It's not good dancing.
No, it's very stiff.
It was like a scene right out of Pocket Ninjas. It was so weird.
But after that, Traxx finally meets the mayor at the public library.
Yeah, okay, so after that press conference, after the press conference where he says, do you personally agree with the actions of the cowboy? And the chief, by the way, I don't think we mentioned this, says, yes, I am absolutely in favor of what he's doing.
I missed when people were just summarily executed.
Right, yeah, and he says something like that. They leave the press conference and the mayor's like, okay, you have to hold off on this. I know that we both agree on this, but you have to not say that shit in public. And then she gets a note, which the film does a terrible job of telling us what that is, but we find out that part of the reason why Traxx was there was to drop a note off to the mayor to meet him at the library, while he has his sidekick out front in full commando gear, standing guard. And then he is inside looking up why all of his cookies suck as she says when she sees him looking to make a better batter. And she comes in to see him in the library, and she has a thing for five heads, and just immediately has the most hots for him.
Yeah, she's practically orgasming as she's talking to him.
Absolutely. Just at the sight of his Christopher McDonald face.
Kisses him, jumps away, says I can't do that, goes back for more.
We're on two opposite sides. You're in the wrong and I'm in the right.
And I don't know.
It's so weird.
I don't care for it.
Literally jumps his bones right there and starts talking about, like, I haven't been laid since I was in office.
Also, I did not realize that she was the mayor until this point.
Yeah, I thought she was a district attorney.
I had no clue what the fuck she was. I don't believe we ever learned her name.
They have one of those scenes where, you know, like the couple making out and the wave crashes over them.
Well, here
or the couple making out and the train goes into the tunnel in the old Hollywood movies. And this one, she jumps his bones, they start making out, and then suddenly the librarian ghost from Ghostbusters is there. And not literally, but the file system,
the card catalog drawers burst open
like in Ghostbusters, and start ejaculating everywhere. And then the fountain out front starts ejaculating everywhere, and it's
I hated it.
It's exceedingly erotic.
It's super erotic. I mean,
it's not at all erotic. It was not sexy. It was so stupid. It was like it's another sign of this movie not being willing to commit to anything. Mm-hmm. Where it's this kind of, if this had happened again in The Naked Gun or an airplane, especially an airplane, I would have bought it. But because of this movie had not set up that kind of tone yet. So it didn't work for me.
It also, this bit is coming out of nowhere. We didn't no fucking clue who this character is.
This is the first time that these two have met. We barely know who Traxx is, much less the mayor.
Can anyone know who Traxx is, though?
Can Traxx know who Traxx is?
I don't know. He has integrity.
He does. Yeah.
He
has a very white bread idea about what's right and wrong.
Yeah. There is a line when she's coming onto him. She like straddles him. She's up on the table. She straddles him.
Yeah.
And she says, how do you want your money? Cash or trash? I assume referring to her vagina as trash.
I don't know.
Because her legs are spread, like she's showing him.
Yeah.
And I assume like she's just cash or trash.
Like trashy, I guess. I don't know. And then I think he says something like trash is for shooting or something like that.
Because he had a weird trash metaphor earlier
in the movie. Yeah.
Hadley Chief. Like, difference between garbage and trash is you kill trash.
It's just I wrote it at some point. It was like, were there pages missing? Like it feels like
there's no connective tissue.
It feels like they were carrying the script from the typewriter to the studio head for approval, and pages were just dropping out of it as they walked. Because there's no connective tissue between any of these moments that we've been mentioning.
Scenes just start and stop.
This whole podcast sounds like we have ADD, and it's believe it or not, it's not us. It's just this movie. It just keeps going, and it leaves you behind.
But we're almost to the end.
Okay.
So now this is another contender for my least favorite jokes, scenes, specifically one element.
It cuts back to the bad guy.
Palucci's in bed.
Getting a hand job
as he lifts
working out
small weights.
That was already super weird.
Yeah. They start to have sex. Traxx burst through their French doors on a motorcycle.
Yep.
Where'd he get the motorcycle? Who knows?
Who knows? Yeah.
Doesn't matter. And again, is it intentional that we don't know where he gets the motorcycle? He just has it because it's awesome for the scene? Mm-hmm. Or is it just shitty writing?
Who knows? Fuck it.
Traxx tells Palucci he needs to get out of town.
Nope. He tells Palucci, stick him up. And Palucci sticks his hands up, and the girlfriend sticks her hands up. And he says, no, stick him all the way up. And then his erection comes up. Palucci's erection comes up under the blanket. The problem is, the special effect that they have for the erection is some sort of lever device that sticks the blanket up. and whatever they have working at some sort of mechanical device, or like an unlucky intern on the set who had to be down there at crotch level poking it up, whatever it is, doesn't work right. So the blanket is continuing to rise and rise and rise ever so slightly for the rest of the scene as they keep cutting back to him and cutting back to Traxx. The blanket keeps rising, and I was like, my God, this guy has the biggest dick.
I didn't notice that.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering if it's part of the joke is that he's getting turned on by Traxx.
If it was part of the joke and it was supposed to be getting bigger, then they needed to commit even harder and had the dick just envelop his entire head at a certain point. This is why I think it was a mistake, because at a certain point when it cuts back to, what's the actor's name again? I'm sorry?
Robert Davi.
Robert Davi suddenly adjusts the blankets so that he almost is doing one of those like knees up situations to cover that area. And I think what happened was they shot his part of the scene all in one take, and the thing wouldn't stop going up, and the joke was over, and they needed to move on. So he just kind of adjusted himself, because it no longer looks like there's an erection there anymore at a certain point. It just looks like he's like making a blanket tent to cover up the thing. And again, maybe that's part of the joke and it's just badly handled, but it really looks like the actor trying to get on with the scene.
You paid way more attention to this dick than I did.
I was so enraptured by this ginormous dick.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
Well, Robert Davi's a rugged-looking man.
To say the least. Yeah.
So, Traxx drives the motorcycle out into the hallway of the house and runs into Pellucci's son.
I guess.
Druggy, he has an arrow through his head like Steve Martin, signs, a diaper.
I feel like all I'm doing is making references to things, but I kept thinking about the mentally challenged son in Twin Peaks who wears the Indian headdress. Johnny. Because and this is again something that comes right the fuck out of nowhere and is almost never mentioned again.
It's just this 3-minute scene.
He's just there with an arrow through his head, and he's talking really slurred.
Yeah.
So I wasn't sure if he was on drugs or if he was mentally handicapped.
Smoke billowed out of his room when the door opened.
He was on drugs.
This is another candidate for like my least favorite joke. I fucking hate.
I don't know what the joke is.
The joke is that the kid is weird.
That's not a joke.
I know. That's why I hate it. That's why I hate it. Is because it's just like
it's not a.
Here's this fucking weird kid, and Traxx doesn't like say anything funny. He doesn't like burn him or anything. You just like
the closest thing to a joke is the kid tries to shoot Traxx.
Well, he does shoot Traxx.
He does shoot Traxx. That's right. And Traxx shoots the arrowhead and the feathered bit off the two ends of the arrow that he has on his head. And he's like, sorry, I had to try. And I'm like, that's the closest thing to a joke in the entire scene.
Well, he also says, guess I'm still trying to impress my dad.
He's like, we all have that problem. And you know what? You're right. That's the worst joke.
I don't know. There's one other contender.
Okay.
But apparently you love this joke.
Anyway, so
hold on.
I did miss one thing.
Okay.
There's another cutaway to the bad guys coming into town. The bad guys take so fucking long to get to town. And there's this one great bit. This is legitimately much funnier than the singing bit. They're driving along and they happen to come across a bunch of bicyclists riding along the road, and they just take a baseball bat, they lean out of the window, and they just hit every single one of them as they drive by and play Whack-A-Biker as they go.
Yeah.
And they all just fall off the bridge that they're on into the water. And that was fucking hilarious, and I loved it. Just wanted to mention it. We can move on.
Do you think Shadoe Stevens would be a good Batman voice?
I think if it was not a seriously taken Batman property, I don't think he would be a good dramatic Batman voice. But I think he would be a good voice in like in Harley Quinn, the animated series, where Batman's hardly there.
So you want to take a job away from Dietrich Bader?
No, I would never take a job away from Dietrich Bader. But if he weren't available, and Shadoe Stevens were still alive, then he could do it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think he'd be decent. He'd
be fine.
He's a good...
He's got a good deep...
He's an announcer, so he has the voice.
He has a good voice.
That doesn't mean he can voice act, but...
But then again, I think he would be a good parody voice for Superman, too.
Sure.
Because he's got that voice that's just like, "Hey, Jimmy!" I think that would be hilarious.
Let's get on the horn with Jim Lee.
Okay.
And tell him to, like, just... For DC Universe, give Shadoe Stevens carte blanche. He puts together a show, he voices everybody, he writes it.
Again, I think Shadoe Stevens is dead, isn't he?
I am 100% sure that he is not.
Okay.
By the way, Shadow.com, official home of Shadoe Stevens.
Oh, great. Oh, wait, no, that's why... Because I thought he was the announcer of SNL, and the original announcer of SNL did pass away recently.
Don Pardo.
Don Pardo. That's... I'm mixing him up with Don Pardo.
Shadoe Stevens' real name, Terry Keith Ingstadt.
I can see why he changed it.
I was hoping that Shadow was a family name.
Yeah.
They came from, like, a clan of mall goths. Like the first mall goths off the Mayflower.
Uh-huh.
That's where the Stevens came from. Shadoe Stevens, Raven Stevens.
Right.
Grimscroft Stevens.
Perfect. Palucci goes to have a little meeting with
Traxx and Dieter.
And Traxx has been shot, so he's not feeling up to fighting a whole lot right now.
Yeah, this is the big downfall for Traxx, is he was shot by a weird kid. Now all the fight's gone out of him.
Yep.
Which I suppose is realistic. If I was shot, I wouldn't
feel up to anything.
But
yeah.
Traxx enjoyed murdering people so much.
Yeah, I don't know. Is this another thing where it's like meta commentary, where the invulnerable badass of Commando is only good as long as he remains invulnerable, and the minute he gets a punch in the nose, he steps out of it? Or...
I can guarantee you it's not that.
Cool.
I can 100% guarantee you it's not that.
Okay.
I was more thinking it's a thing where it's like, in movies, it's, oh no, he's not gonna do it, he's gonna give up.
There has to be the third act, oh no.
But moment. It's so weak-willed in this. It's just like, I don't know, maybe I'll do it. It's
only there because, that's the kind of thing that happens in movies in the third act. That's...
Yeah. But Palucci shows up.
Yep.
He has the chili cookie.
Yep.
The chili con cookie.
He gives the chili cookie to Palucci.
And he says to Traxx, like, hey, I can force people to buy your cookies or I'll kill them.
Yeah.
And here's where Traxx, the shining man of integrity, says, no thank you, sir.
I want them to buy my cookies because they love them.
And Palucci goes back to his car.
Yep. And he says, even if I did force people to eat these cookies, they wouldn't eat them.
And then he farts for a very long time.
Yes.
Then he lights up a cigar.
And the car blows up.
And the car blows up.
And he's dead. And that's it for his character.
And I hate it.
I like it. I don't think it's done particularly well, but as a concept, having the bad guy of your entire movie killed that abruptly by complete happenstance is fucking hilarious to me.
It is. I enjoy the concept as well.
Yeah.
But
the fart joke was not good.
No, it was really the most contrived thing possible, because it's like, oh man, how could Palucci fart? How can we get this man to fart? Right. Oh, chili cookie.
Yeah, obviously. Chili cookie. Because, when I have a single spoonful of chili, I immediately have the farts.
I fart so much that my car with open windows...
That's right, the windows are open.
The windows are completely open.
Oh my god.
Yeah, I hate it.
Toxic farts.
But so now he's out.
He's out of the movie. He's gone forever. So now we only have the
Guzicks.
The Guzicks.
Who, this is my favorite image from this movie. This is something that has stuck with me. This is when I was thinking of, like, we were originally going to do a different movie for the first episode.
Were we?
Violence Voyager.
Oh, yes.
Which we will get to.
Mm-hmm.
But I was thinking about this movie, and I remembered this part, and I'm like, oh man, I love Traxx so much. This is best shit ever.
This is, if I know what you're talking about, this is the best shit
The
ever.
Guzicks have murdered a Little League coach in front of the Little League team.
They have a real thing against Little League. If you remember, they were banished to Mexico because
They killed
a Little League team.
As part of a point shaving scandal. which is a great like parody farce joke, like, or,
Yes, that's a great gag.
Like these dumb comedies. That's a great gag.
Yeah.
So now they've gone back to, and they round up the Little League team on horseback, like firing guns.
Yep.
And then now they have them strapped to the outside of their car to form a barrier of just they're vertical, and they're just across. They're just tied all around the car, and it's an insane image. It's fucking hilarious.
It's a human shield of Little League players. It's one of the most insane things I've ever seen, and it makes the movie.
It does. I love the movie.
It's the best moment since the opening with the pet store.
Yes, it's great, and the Guzicks are out the sunroof. They're like tossing grenades, which, by the way, it's okay when Traxx does it.
That's
when
right.
Traxx is just fucking destroying everything, everyone's like, "Yeah, Traxx, do it."
Mm-hmm.
But the Guzicks do it.
It's bad. This movie makes for an interesting 1000 Wives of Weird entry, because the movie is legitimately the best when it puts its all into being as bizarre as possible.
Yes.
And so it's almost like the movie is trying to get on a show like this. Like, it's trying to be, but it fails to stick the landing for so much of the film. And then there are moments like this where it just, bam! It just hits it.
Yeah.
And it's so good.
It really does. Like I said, I enjoyed most of the movie.
Yeah.
There were 4 jokes that I fucking hate. The other one was the Mayor Sex jokes, aside from cookies and the other 2. But I enjoyed most of it. But it could be way better than it is. Like, it's so close to being great. It's good. I think it's worth seeing, because there are some laugh out loud funny moments in here.
Right.
Let's get to the very boring and anticlimactic end of this movie.
Well,
Dieter gets shot.
Yeah.
The Guzicks threaten to drive the car with the Little Leaguers into the river.
That's right. Yeah, they do. Which is just great. They say, "We're going to wait around while you decide," or something, and drive off. There was another brief bit where a cop was going to kill Traxx, because I don't know why.
I don't know. It seemed like he was on a stakeout for several hundred days.
I think that was one of the pages that got lost in between offices. But then he realizes that his kid is on the Little League team, so he decides to help Traxx.
He tries to help Traxx, and he's like, "They got my boy. My one's the hood ornament."
And he's like, "I'll drive," and Traxx is like, "You need to take a shower. I'll go."
Yeah. But there is a great exchange that I specifically noted.
Yeah.
They get some help for Dieter, like they're taking him to the hospital. And
yes.
The mayor looks in and he says, "Oh, he's losing a lot of blood." Traxx goes, "How much?" The chief says, "It looks like a liter." Traxx goes, "Damn. Dieter lost a liter."
Oh, fuck. That was...
I delivered it better than he did.
You delivered it better than the movie did, and it's still a bad joke.
It's a bad joke, but it's so amazingly bad. Like, this is where that is a line where Leslie Nielsen could have sold it. I just think about the writing process for the line, where it's like you have to. No one says how much when he says like he's losing a lot of blood. It's like it's a lot. No one has a measuring cup. We're not. It's like, but it's such a contrived way to get to a joke that is not worth it in any way. But
it's almost funny in how far out of their way they went. So then he tracks the bad guys down to their lair, which is like an old movie theater. No, they're
in the abandoned strip club.
The now abandoned strip club, which shows you how evil they are, because they're reigniting the flame of sin in this.
Exactly.
Film. And they have
which, by the way, people are out of jobs.
Yeah.
That's affecting the economy.
Yeah. But
that's just empty building space now for low lives like this to take up.
Right, exactly. But they have the little leaguers in front, tied up in a human barricade in front of the place. Traxx,
which there's nothing stopping anybody from just like going up and like taking the kids away.
No, they're not even watching them. They're inside, like watching TV, and I think still
Drinking.
shooting their guns off.
Yeah,
yeah, and I think they're taking turns dunking each other underwater, and seeing how long they can last without dying. You know, bad people things. And Traxx shows up, shoots unnecessarily, shoots the ropes out. And the kids are all like...
The kids are so excited!
Gee, thanks, mister! And run off. Great job to the kid actors, by the way. They, with no dialogue, they absolutely sold this G. Willikers bullshit they were going on with. He takes out a gunman who's stationed on the roof and breaks into this old couple's house, old couple's apartment.
He was like falling through the roof.
Oh yeah, no, he falls through the roof into this old couple's apartment who apparently live over the strip club. And the old lady's like, "I'm making cookies," and he's like, "Really? What kind?" And she's like, "Prawn cookies or something like that." It's
one of the dumb shit cookies he came up with.
And he's
earlier.
like, "I knew it! I need that recipe!
I'll be back
for that recipe." And then he falls through the floor with their TV. He says, how do you want to do this, guns or fists? And they say, fists. And so he throws his guns away and they say, guns! And he's like, oh shit. And grabs his guns. They start an incredibly boring shootout.
Yeah.
Where it's literally just like every episode of The Lone Ranger, just behind the thing. Bang, bang! Oh no, they went behind the thing.
The
bang,
action
bang.
in this action movie is not good.
That's the most disappointing thing about this.
It's just a lot of gun firing.
Just a lot of gun firing.
And this ending sucks. I hate this ending.
Yeah.
Like, it's just... it's boring. They get in their respective vehicles.
Yeah. Oh, well, there's one good gag in this. So they're shoot. The TV is still on somehow, and it's a talk show host talking about something, and she suddenly starts talking about, and it's a fact that killers have teeny weeny pathetic little penises. That's right, I know. If your guy is a killer, he has a teeny weeny pathetic little penis.
And she calls it a wazoo.
A wazoo, yeah. And they suddenly, all four of them, three bad guys, one Traxx, stop shooting and just start staring at this TV screen. And then the bad guys start shooting at it. And for a second, I misunderstood and thought all of them were shooting at it. And if all of them had been shooting at it, that would have been the best joke ever.
I was hoping Traxx would shoot it too.
Yeah, because they're all killers.
Yes.
But the movie refuses to acknowledge that because Traxx is a good guy and therefore is not a murderer who hangs people up in the street. He is a justice man who hangs people up in the street.
Exactly.
And only the bad guys have teeny weeny itty bitty penises. Shadoe Stevens has the world's biggest balls. How else do you explain the voice?
Yeah, I didn't care for that joke too much. Like I said, if
I like the concept of the joke.
Yes.
Yeah.
They get into their respective vehicles. They drive off. There's like,
and then they have a gun jousting.
Yeah, they have a car gun joust.
Yes.
There is an awesome part where Traxx makes his truck do a wheelie somehow.
Do a wheelie while driving forward. And I think that was... I took that as like the ultimate expression of him as the cowboy. So his car is now literally his horse. Is now literally his horse.
That's a beautiful and deep interpretation.
Thank you. It would have been even better if the car had gone like made an actual horse noise.
He revved it like
yeah, exactly. It's like hi ho silver and drove it off. That would have been amazing.
Like, an eagle had swooped down. Like
oh god,
cried as it. Not cried too, like ah.
No, I get it.
So
it was a couple years before John Woo made it to the States, so we didn't have any birds in this movie. We should have. We didn't have as many birds as I would have liked.
But now, when you have the awesome moment of making your truck do a wheelie, Traxx should have just like killed them all right then.
Yes, the car should have just spun around and he was just firing a submachine gun and they explode and no.
Or better. Truck comes down on their car.
Oh my god!
Like a monster truck.
Yes. And then you do a real Looney Tunes gag where, like, the car's coming down and they're like, oh no! And and the car literally just goes flat. And they're just and then the car rolls off of them and you just have, like, these flat, cartoon things where they're just completely pancaked and their eyes are still moving around.
I don't think they had the budget for that.
Probably not. Yeah, but
it would have been a better ending than the one where we got, where it's...
What even happens? I forget.
The Guzicks have a bundle of dynamite.
Oh,
Traxx
that's right.
shoots it a little bit. They drop it. They drive into a barn and it explodes. It's boring.
It's very boring. At least it's an explosion.
Everything after the strip club, the movie gets so much weaker.
Yeah.
It really degenerates.
It really does.
So Traxx is a hero.
Yep.
The mayor gives a speech. There's a guitar player right fucking next to her.
Oh my god, yes.
The luckiest extra in the world, like, got to jam on that thing.
And the mayor is just jamming out to the fucking guitar. She is living for this guitar.
Honestly, my favorite part of the movie might be her jumping and singing with the lead singer.
Yeah.
It's so great.
It's so 80s. It's so good.
I also just hope that was, like, I imagine the actresses had fun doing that, too.
I think she did. And then, there's one last cookie joke where he made a cookie that's shaped like dog shit.
Which Snacks by Traxx. It's a food truck, apparently.
They opened the thing. And apparently, his cookies are still not good. There's no resolution to that subplot. His cookies, he said that he wanted people to buy the cookies because they love the cookies. But as we see people leaving the cookie store, literally throwing the cookies in the trash. They're literally only buying the cookies because they love him for saving the town. People are literally throwing them in the garbage. One character throws it up after he eats it.
It's because it was like prunes and laxatives.
Still,
I didn't notice them throwing it out.
I saw a couple of people just throwing bags of cookies into the trash as they walked by.
Then that's fucking hilarious. That's hilarious that it's this empty, useless victory. It's
a completely empty victory for him.
It's a beautiful irony in a movie that has no irony whatsoever.
The movie could have used some irony.
But
yeah, so...
And then, as Dieter is manning Traxx by Snacks.
Yep.
Snacks by Traxx.
He's alive. He
survived. Unlike his family. Dieter's a lucky man. He survived his father. He survived the Guzicks.
And then
if there was a Traxx series, like, Dieter would just almost always be dying.
Oh my god, I would pay to see that. Just to have just like, oh my god, you killed Kenny. It's like every episode, oh my god, you killed Dieter.
But who shows up to try out Traxx's cookies?
Who does?
Famous Amos himself.
Oh, was that who that was?
That was who that was. You didn't recognize?
I did not recognize Famous Amos.
Yeah,
and he throws up the cookie, I think, is what he does, yeah. And then Traxx is like, watch the counter for me, Dieter. And he goes out to see his lady love, the mayor. And then the movie ends on probably the most bizarre camera shot I may have ever seen as a last shot of a movie. It feels like it should be the ending shot of like an art film or something, or definitely not this. But it was the end shot of this. They literally got the camera guy to sit in a bucket seat of a Ferris wheel and turn on the camera, and that is all that happened. And the guy goes around the Ferris wheel twice. Traxx is not on the Ferris wheel with his lady love. I thought that's where they were going with it. He's not on the Ferris wheel. His lady love's not on the Ferris wheel. No one we know is on the Ferris wheel. We only see the back of people's heads because it's that kind of Ferris wheel where everyone's facing in the same direction. And the Ferris wheel goes around once, it goes around twice, and then we cut to black. And that's the end of the movie. It's like B-roll footage that somehow made it into the movie, and that's the last shot of the film.
I was super checked out during the end. I did not notice that. I glanced up from taking my notes, and I was like, Fair enough. It looks like B-roll, and just went back.
Yeah, no, that's... it. They literally go around the same Ferris wheel twice. And there's no jokes, nothing happens. Ferris wheel.
They just wanted you to revel in this moment where a psychopathic war criminal became successful, not by his merits, but by murder.
It literally is a very weak sauce ending, like an incredibly weak sauce ending. It sucks, and I think that's probably beyond any other problem I have with the movie. That's my biggest gripe, is that it doesn't end with a bang. It just kind of peters out.
It very much does.
Yeah. That's the problem with killing your main bad guy so early, is that you may be playing with the structure of the action movie, which is great, but if you have nothing to replace it with, you might as well just stick to the structure of your action movie.
Exactly. So that's Traxx.
That's Traxx.
We covered a lot of ground, left a lot of footprints.
Yeah. Oh, I get it.
Yeah.
Sometimes that's what Traxx means.
What do Shadoe Stevens, the Trans-Siberian Railroad, and Quincy Jones have in common? Traxx. That was a potential intro for this episode.
Fun.
But yeah, that's... I don't think we need to sum up how we feel about Traxx.
I think we pretty much said it in the beginning.
In the preceding 3 hours. Or the most anyone has ever talked about Traxx ever.
Probably.
Someone should alert Shadoe Stevens' widow. Oh, right, he's not dead.
He's
you just
not
buried
dead.
him in your mind.
I just buried him in my mind, yeah. Someone should alert Shadoe Stevens' widow. He's not dead.
No, that people are talking about him.
Next week, or whenever we record again, if it's next week, next month, whatever we do, next time we're going to be talking about the most recent live-action Japanese iteration of the Godzilla franchise, Shin Godzilla.
Okay.
I'm very curious to get your thoughts on it. It's probably the most unique film in the entire franchise.
Shin Godzilla.
Shin Godzilla.
Do I need to see Ankle Godzilla?
No. It is a completely unrelated from the rest of the parts of the foot.
Okay.
Yeah.
What about the leg?
No, completely self-contained.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay, Shin Godzilla it is then.
Shin Godzilla.
Is that something you have given me a copy of? Is that one of the DVDs I have?
I think so. Because I did get I have the Blu-ray. I think I gave you the DVD. Yep.
That'll work. All right.
All right.
Okay. We should come up with a catchphrase to sign off the end of episodes.
Sure.
So that's homework.
That's homework.
Let's give this a real week ending. Bye.